dear learners on the platform of MOOCs. I am Professor Nafis Ahmed Ansari from Department of Political Science of Aligarh Muslim University. Today's discussion we are going to a talk on All India services. The All India services are different from the candidates are chosen from the center, union government and federal system, but different state cadres assign their jobs and they are responsible to both the state and the center. People think this is one way that the country's federal structure make the union government stronger than the state government. The 1951 All India Services Act sets out the powers and duties of these All India services. It also gives the Indian government the power, with the help of a state government, to make rules, guidelines for hiring people to work for All India services. The All India Service Behavior Rules 1968 set rules for how all government servants should behave and control the All India services. Putting civil servants into group, it is important to any country's state personnel system. Since civil workers are hired at different levels of the government, services must be categorized so that they can be placed. In this lesson, we will mostly talk about two important services called All India Services AIS and Central Services CES. The word civil service was first used by East India Company as a name for establishment of non-military on civilian employees in India. At this point, civil service refers to all non military government or state workers. As an A.N. Gladden says, the idea of civil service is seen as a professional body of neutral experts in the administrations who are here to serve the nation regardless of their gains and without regard to party or political terms or class interests. He goes on to say that civil service is the name of an important government institution that includes the government's officials and staff. It stands for a spirit important to success of modern democracy. Public servants who love helping people with their whole lives. Herman Feiner, another thinker, says who viewed civil servants services as a body of officials, permanent, paid, and skilled, noted that the function of civil services is not only just in shaping government policies but importantly in the responsibility of translating these policies into actions. They do a lot different kinds of public work for people in modern states. It's becoming increasingly important of the people's well-being that they do not or they do their jobs quickly and with care. The first Administrative Reform Commission, in its report on personal administration, noted that a society depends on effective working of the government for its progress and well-being. Of course, the quality of government, no matter what kind it is, democratic or not, depends on the people who work there. Therefore, the competence and the morale of civil services are basic to good governance and essential for all advancement. An all India group of services has been around since the beginning of the Indian civil services during the time of East India Company. The All India Corps worked in almost every part of the British government. However, Governor General did not have a power over these services. Instead, the Secretary of State managed them directly. No Indian government had a say in the pay, pension, firing, or other things. He or she was in charge of these services as the Secretary of State in Council. These were the exclusive services that did not care about or answer to public. During the reform era that started with the Government of India Act 1919 was a heart of these services to change. In 1924, the Lee Commission said that some AIS, All India Services, should be gotten rid. These were mostly those that dealt with the department that had been transferred to Indian hands by the Act of 1919. The Indian Educational Service, the Indian Agricultural Service, the Indian Veterinary Services, and the Roads and Building branch of the Indian Services of Engineers were some of these. It did, however, say that the Indian Civil Services, the Indian Police Services, the Indian Forest Services, the Indian Medical Services, and the Irrigation branch of the Indian Service of Engineers should stay with the All India Services. The Commission also said that any British officer could retire with a pension if Indian minister ever took over the department where they worked. People actually followed through with these suggestions. Further, changes were made in the positions of these services by the Government of India Act of 1935. Officials who would work for the provincial government said that the provincial government should hire all of them. They were not to be made by Secretary of State. Section 224 of the Act of 1935 laid out this suggestion. Thus, at the time of power transfer in 1947, retirement was open only to two AIS, namely the ICS and IP. The recruitment to the IMS has been halted. The most important and the highest ranking of all such services were Indian Civil Service, commonly known as the ICS, which was bestowed owing to its high remunerations and enormous power and prestige. When the British left India, there were 10 AIS and 22 CES. In fact, Sardar Patel, who was the Home Minister of the Governor General's Executive Council at the time, got the provincial government to agree to creations of Indian Administrative Service IAS and the Indian Police Service IPS, which would take the place of old ICS and IP. This happened as early as October 1946. All India Services, the first company we will discuss here, says the Constitution sets up services for country. It adopts the IAS and IPS cadre, which had already been formed under Article 312. Article 312.1 says that the Union Parliament can make more AIS whenever it thinks it is necessary or helpful for the country, as long as at least 2/3 of the members present and voting support a resolution to the effect in the Council of State, that is the upper house. As a result of the Council of State having representative for various states, the creation of new services will have the support of all the states. The Parliament decides who can join AIS and how they can work, we have only set up the services. The Indian Forest Service. There was an AIS Act in 1951 because of the rights given by the subsection section 3 of this act says that the central government made new rules and laws for AIS. Presently, there are only three All India services, namely the Indian Administrative Service (IAS), Indian Police Service (IPS), and Indian Forest Service (IFS) existing in the country. The people who work for these services are given a state called a cadre state, and they work for that state's government until they retire. They can, however, work for the Indian government on a deputation basis for 10 years. We will not talk about or we can discuss about three parts of the AIS: the Indian Administrative Service, the Indian Police Service, and the Indian Forest Service. Let us talk of Indian Administrative Service first. The All India Services, it is the old Indian service that gave birth to the Indian Administrative Service. As an All India Service, it is directly controlled by the Union government. It is further split into state units, each controlled directly by its own state government. Officers are sent to different state groups when they are hired. There are a set of number of officials in each state cadre, but there is also a backup of officers who can be sent to work for the union government for 3, 4, or 5 years before retiring to their state cadres. This ensures that the union government can hire officers who know first hand how to think works in the states, and it also gives the state government access to officers who know about the policies and programs of the union government. This kind of deal works for both sides good for both countries. Most individuals officers have a chance of serving at least one spell of duty under the union government. Some may have more than one such spell. The tenure system is the official term for top officials moving in and out of secretariat jobs. Authorities pay these corps salaries, pensions. However, central government is in charge of discipline and punishments. This area follow the advance of the Union Public Service advices of the Union Public Service Commission. The fact that this service is made up of journalist administrators who are expected to do a lot of different tasks in another things that make it stand out. For instance, keeping the peace, collecting taxes, overseeing business, trades and industry, doing good deeds, progress and growth works, and so on. Simply put, the IAS is meant to do everything the IAS used to do, except for hiring people to work in the courts. In other words, the service is a broad service and its officers can work in almost any part of the government. A public servant's rank is based on how long they have worked for the government. An IAS officer starts working in a state as a 2-year temporary officer. In these 2 years, the officer works in a district magistrate's office, at a training school, in the field and in the headquarters. It is their job to keep peace as a sub-divisional magistrate, as a sub-divisional development workers doing general administration work like building up the area, or as a sub-divisional collector collecting money and taxes. After 2 years as a junior scale officer, the person goes up to the senior scale. With enough time, he or she can become a joint secretary. However, someone who has worked for same company for 13 years can be moved to a special secretary. After 16 years of regular service, a civil workers in the United States can become a commissioner come secretary, which is the next level of promotion. After 24 years of steady service, an IAS officer may be promoted to the principal secretary or financial commissioners in the states. Every state has secretaries or principal secretaries and chief secretaries. A person can become a chief secretary in the state. The highest level is the highest civil services positions, and other can help them. Many states like Delhi pay the chief secretary the same amount as the financial commissioner, and high level secretaries like additional chief secretaries. A division commissioner oversees the district business, which includes the collecting taxes and planning new projects. For each of these, there is also an area magistrate in charge of keeping the peace. The divisional commissioner is in charge of their area, taking care of law and order as well as the general administration and growth tasks in his or her division in her job. There are districts under each divisions, and the district collector DC run such districts. The district collector runs the district's business, which includes collecting taxes, planning new projects, and other things. Another group is the district magistrate, whose job is to keep the peace in their areas. Next is Indian Police Service, IPS. As one of the All India services, the IPS or Indian Police Service is the charge of keeping the people safe, keeping the country safe, and keeping the law. After India was freed in 1947, the imperial police took into place. The Department of Personal and Administrative Reforms sets the general rules for IPS employees. Even though the Home Ministry affair runs the IPS, senior police officers worldwide are members of IPS no matter what department they work for. All of the officers in the IPS come from the same United All India Civil Services. Looking at which hires people for IAS and IPS and other central services jobs. The IPS works in state groups, even though the IAS holds the positions. Their control, power, and speedy promotions are all very good. This is the IPS. People who wants to join the IPS first go through 5 months of basic training. Afterwards, they go to the Sardar Patel National Police Academy in Hyderabad for more specialized training. Police officers study things like crime psychology, science, tools for finding criminals, ways to fight corruption, and ways to help people in emergencies. These studies, along with training, drills, handling weapons, and other things, directly affects their normal duties. Once the probationer has finished their year of training, they must pass a test given by the UPSC. After that, he or she is made an assistant superintendent of police. These are the different jobs an IPS officer has while in the service. The officer in charge of the police subdivision for 2 years probations, officer in charge or duty commissioner of police after 4 years of service, junior administrative grade after 9 years of service, selection grade after 13 years of service, officer in charge of the police or additional commissioner of police after 14 years of service, inspector general of police after 18 years of work, additional director general of police after 25 years of service, director general of police after 30 years of service. The Director General of Commissioner of Police oversees all the police in a state or metropolitan city. These peoples are in charge of keeping the law and order in the whole state. Below her or him comes the additional DGP. The Inspector General or Joint Commissioner of Police heads a specialized police units like the Criminal Investigation Department, Special Branch, etc. On top of that, the agents work for Intelligence Bureau, the Research and Analysis Wing, and the Central Bureau of Investigation. They also get to work for government companies like Indian Oil Corporation, SAIL, GAIL, SAIL, and others government companies. They also work in the state secretariat and the central secretariat as a part of central staffing plans. There are also posts for top officers such as Director General of Central Reserve Police Force, the Director General of the Central Industrial Force, and the Director General of Border Security Force. The third in the series of All India services is Indian Forest Service, IFS. After India gained independence, the All India Services Act 1951 created the Indian Forest Service in 1966 to protect, preserve, and restore forest resources. The UPSC gives a written test and interviews to people who want to join these services. There is a general civil services in the IAS, but this is not that service. This is unique service. As a part of job, the DOP and AR are in charge of running it and making rules and personal issues. Once chosen, the appointees undergo a 3 months foundation training with other successful IAS and CS candidate. After the foundation course, the probationers move to their own academy, that is the Indian Forest Institute at Dehradun, for a 2 years training course, and the end of which they have to pass an examination before permanent posting. The corps get enough training to be ready to work in the country's toughest area. The IFS is based on cadre. Like any other AIS members, a member of this service can go to the center on deputations. They have to go back to their cadre when the deputation is over. When he starts working in any office within the cadre, he is on probation for 1 year. After that, he is sent to a new office with the same cadre on a permanent basis. The Indian Forest Service has a certain ranks: officer on probations, chief forest officers DFOs, chief conservator of forest CCFS, deputy conservator of forest DCFS, additional chief conservators of forest ACCFS. The principal chief conservator of the forest PCCF is the state's top forest official. Director General of Forest DGF. This is the top job at the center, and the person chosen is chosen from the state's most senior PCCFS. In addition to getting entrusted with top positions in the central secretariat and state secretariat and various tasks under the central staffing plan, the IFS officers also work in several national and international organizations relating to their work. These are some of the groups. Example, forest is one of the list of the things that are happening the same times. The SARC Forest Centers, the Indian Forest Survey Wildlife Institute of India, Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education, ICFRE, Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy, IGNFA, Direction of Teaching in Forest, the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, Organization of the United Nations for Food and Agriculture, Center for Integrated Mountain Development at the international level. So, going through all these studies, we can say that the main reason for having AIS were to provide talented and merit based administrative staff to both the central government and the state governments, make it easier for the center and the states to communicate with each other, make sure that the standards of administrations were the same everywhere, make sure that services were fair for everyone, and make sure that the people were happy and felt safe using the services. The people see the AIS as a key part of bringing the country together. People think that AIS members have an overall view of India. AIS can become an important part of bringing and keeping the country together. The fact that members of AIS are chosen from all over the India helps to maintain democratic unity. In theory, this aspect of AIS seems amazing, but studies shows that young people today are not as like to join the AIS. Something like this might happen because of the government stance on reservations and the fact that plenty of good paying jobs are available. In the age of privatization and liberalization, various multinational companies have joined the arena, which was earlier the exclusive reserve of the public sectors. There are also a lot of AIS, IAS, or IPS officers in all the top government jobs, whether at the center or in the state. This makes it harder for the people who work for the state civil services to get promoted. Even though officers in the state civil services get moved to the top positions, the system would be made more adaptable to work with state level civil servants. It is possible to say that the AIS is an important way for the center and the states to talk to each other. During times of stress and strain, this organization is the only one that helps to keep the federal spirit of the constitution alive. Thank you.